without further ado, let's get to our special guest for tonight, Justin Lorber, a.k.a. Future Dodgers. On short notice, Justin, I appreciate you being willing to hop on, talk Rule 5 draft with us. I haven't gotten a chance to talk to you since the World Series, so I'll give you a moment to share any stories, any special moments for you as it relates to the 2024 World Series.
You're putting me on the spot there. I don't know. It was fun.
How did it feel for you compared to 2020? That's the best question I like to ask people. Because I tell people 2020 was my first. I listened to none of the nonsense about it not mattering, but there are a lot of people, and I totally understand, who have sort of a special feeling towards this 2024 team and the experience.
No, honestly, it is a lot different. I think 2020 was such a sense of like relief. Like I agree. I think that most, if not all, of the points people made to try to detract from that championship are they just don't have a lot of merit to them. That one really felt like a lot of relief. This one was, I think, it was different in that I felt like I could appreciate it more in the moment. Like, game one is happening, and they're down in the 8th inning, they tie, and it's like, even if they lose, this is a classic game.
Yeah.
This, like, I could take a step back in the moment and just be like, they might lose this game, they might lose this series. This is a classic World Series game. This is going to be an all-timer. That was before the walk-off home run happened. So I think that's a lot different. Whereas in 2020, it was just like, oh my God, they're gonna lose this game. Like, how is this happening again? So I think that to be able to enjoy that stuff in the moment, it helped that for at least most of the last two series, they were playing with a lead, a lead in the game, usually a lead in the series, almost always, which helps in terms of like
the enjoyment level,
general anxiety.
Yeah, I'm with you. All right, well, let's talk. Today was the deadline for all teams across Major League Baseball to protect players from the Rule 5 draft. We don't need to get into the specifics. We've done that on previous shows about what the Rule 5 draft is, who was eligible. The Dodgers, as 3 o'clock came and went, it seemed like for a moment maybe they hadn't protected anybody. In classic Dodgers fashion, theirs just was like the last one announced. They added a relief pitcher, Jake Dreyer, to the 40-man roster. And this feels like it was a surprise. I mean, you're, of course, one of the places that I go. I think you had him 5th on your list of guys you thought the Dodgers might protect. You listed him at like in the 20% category. Bruce, who we've had on the show, had him 4th on his list. And yet this is the guy the Dodgers choose. So we'll get to in a second Austin Gauthier and the guys that they chose not to protect. Give me your reaction to hearing that Jake Dreyer was the one player that the Dodgers chose to protect.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously I didn't place him as like the most likely person, but this is kind of a weird year where all the guys who would have been locked or something close to locks were already added mid-season. River Ryan, Justin Robleski, Ben Kasparius, Eduardo Henriquez, the latter two being guys who maybe at the start of the year, weren't locked or likely additions, but as we got to the second half of the season, clearly looked like that.
Yeah.
Those guys were all added mid-season. So you go into the Rule 5 draft where, unlike a lot of previous years where, either there's a top prospect or there's, someone who's like a clear, near major league contributor, like this guy's definitely got to be added, wasn't really the case this year. So I didn't expect them to make, 3 or 4 or 5 additions. But honestly, no one name would have really shocked me, just because it looked like they had maybe 1 or 2 spots, and there wasn't anyone who stood out as like a must protect. And as for Dreyer, I think, you look at the major league bullpen where you have Alex Vestia, you have Anthony Banda as your 2 lefties, and behind that, not really any lefty relief options. So you get him on the 40-man as a potential third lefty relief option behind those 2, and might see some time in the majors next year.
Yeah, Dreyer, an undrafted free agent in 2021 out of Iowa, left-handed pitcher you mentioned, 32% strikeout rate, AA and AAA last year, an ERA of 2.2. When I read the profile, Justin, you mentioned Alex Vessia as one of the only 2 lefties they have on at the major league level, at least. Dreyer's profile seems to scream Alex Vesia. Like they're hoping that this is a guy who turns into it. I say that because it's a fastball that sits 93, which is obviously not a very big number, but relies on induced vertical break about 18 inches. Vesia is like 20 plus inches. One of the guys they signed to a minor league contract is right around 18, 19 as well. So clearly this is a profile the Dodgers like. So when I read that, to me, it makes a little bit more sense how this guy goes from undrafted in 2021 to protected in the rule from the Rule 5 draft in 2024.
Yeah, really a meteoric rise. A guy who coming into the year hadn't pitched above high A. He starts out at double A, 14 scoreless innings, moves up to triple A and continues with an ERA under 3 in a very offensive friendly environment.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily easy to do. More strikeouts than innings pitched. And like you said, not necessarily big velocity. The vertical break on the fastball is going to be above average. It's not Vesia quality where, or maybe like a guy like Tanner Scott where guys just can't see it.
Yeah.
And it's like the invisible fastball, regardless of velocity. But it's 18 inches is still above average for a major league fastball, a four-seam fastball for IVB. So that's the primary pitch. He also has a slider, kind of a gyro slider that he throws, mixes in a curveball and sinker as well. But yeah, I think you're looking at him potentially similar. So I'm thinking about when the Dodgers first got Vesia, and I think at that point he was sitting, even like lower 90s, maybe like 91, 92. And I had written or said to someone at the time, like, if he gets a little bit of a velo bump up to 93, 94, this is going to be a quality major league bullpen arm. And and he did get that velo bump, and he has been since. I think you're looking at a guy like Dreyer, who, with what he has now, could be a major league contributor already, but any velo bump, and I think, you kick that up a notch.
Let's talk about the guys they chose not to protect. There's a couple guys on this list, a guy like Ryan Ward, who I think it's pretty easy for me to understand why he wasn't protected. Ryan Ward is a guy who's a little bit older on prospect side, has produced, has hit for power at AAA, but he kind of seems like the type of player who might be a quad A player, or at the very least, we've seen guys, and you might have been the one, somebody compared him to like a Ryan Noda, but one of these guys that just, this sounds very pretentious to say, but it's probably accurate. Like he will make it on a team that is not named the Dodgers, but from the Dodgers perspective, he didn't feel like there was a pathway forward. The guy that most people had at the top of their list was Austin Gauthier, another guy who's kind of had a meteoric rise, similar to Jack Dreyer. The difference is he had unbelievable success all the way up until AAA. And then he hit AAA this past year and really struggled in what should have been a hitter's park, except the power went down, the OPS went down. So he's a multi-position player, high on-base percentage type guy, and yet he struggles. Do you think it's as simple as the Dodgers maybe believe that he's not going to be picked because of those struggles in AAA, or do you think that maybe they feel like he's hit his ceiling?
Any roster decision when it comes to the Rule 5 draft, you're weighing risk versus, but it's an exercise in risk tolerance.
Yeah.
We could add him to the 40-man roster. 20% chance he gets picked, 40% chance. Like, these are all things that they're weighing. I wouldn't say that he's hit his ceiling. Obviously he's struggled, and I think if he hadn't struggled, he would probably be on the 40-man roster.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just, it can be a little simple at times. If he'd hit a AAA, he's probably on the 40-man roster, but still a guy who could make an impact next year, like you said. Plays multiple positions, can play all over the field. Even played a little bit of outfield in the last couple years, getting his bat in some different spots defensively. So I can see him being added. At the same time, now you go into next season, and if you're looking at, we don't know exactly how the lineup will shake out, but if there's one or two offensive injuries, now you're looking at guys like Alex Freeland and Dalton Rushing, who are already at AAA. Those guys might get first call to come fill those spots, push Gauthier down, and then next year you have another set of Rule 5 guys who've got to be protected.
Yeah.
So it's not, the door is not closed. I wouldn't say it's closed at all. But yeah, I had him as like my top guy to be protected, but not like in past years where it's like, oh, this guy's a lock to be protected, or I really think he's going to be protected. If he doesn't, he's going to get picked.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think Gauthier or one of the other guys, Ward, someone else the Dodgers didn't protect, could get taken in the Rule 5 draft, but there's no one that screams to me like, oh, like this guy's for sure getting taken.
Yeah, and to your point on risk tolerance, it's a great point for a couple of reasons. One, it's the risk of what are the odds they actually get chosen. Then there's the percentage of what are the odds that they actually stick with that team. Gus Varland famously was drafted away from the Dodgers a couple of years ago and did not stick, ends up getting sent back to the Dodgers. And so he ends up back in the 40-man and in the organization. So let me get you out of here on this question. You kind of just hinted at it. Not knowing, I mean, I'm not expecting you to be an expert on every roster across the league, but when you look at the list of guys, I mentioned Ryan Ward. He feels like a guy who could get picked because he's been in AAA long enough and he has put up numbers there that suggest that there's probably a number of teams that even if it's as a fourth outfielder could very easily be a contributor on some of these rosters. Is there someone that you think might be more likely to be taken in this draft? Andre Lipsius, another guy that's in this group. Carlos Duran, another player. Is there somebody else that you think might be more likely than my pick of Ryan Ward to actually be taken in the Rule 5 draft?
I think Gauthier would be the most likely just because of the positional versatility, being able to play up the middle. Um, he's an older prospect. I think he's 25. Um, so yeah, like even if he's not a premium offensive impact kind of player, you can count on quite a few hands the number of like defense first, middle infield utility uh, bat types
Yeah.
across the major leagues in the last few years. Um, so he could be that guy, and he could still stick on a major league team, even if the offensive impact isn't there. So I would say Gauthier, Damon Keith. I'll bring him up as well. I think it would be a little unexpected because he hasn't played above Double A yet. But the power speed combo, I could see that being enticing for a rebuilding team that wants to take a chance on someone who could be talented. And uh, it would be a jump having not played above Double A. He was injured partially this year. Um, but that would be another potential guy who I don't think we've mentioned yet.
Thank you. Awesome. Awesome. And is it Jake Vogel? Am I right on that one? That's another guy who was a former top draft pick. Am I right that he's eligible? Or am I crazy?
Let's see. So he would have been drafted. He was drafted the COVID year. So yeah, he'd be first time eligible this year.
And Cody Hosey's the other guy who I believe was either in the same draft or has already been for Rule 5 eligible and was not taken. Is that right?
Yeah. So he was 2019 draft. So this would be his, I believe, third year eligible because he would have had the same Rule 5 protection year as Michael Busch.
Okay.
So he's been eligible for a couple of years. Obviously, I had someone ask me a question on Twitter about him. Best season of his career so far. But yeah, I mean, I think it would be a little surprising to see him get taken.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, that's Justin Lorber. You can check his stuff out at futuredodgers.com. If you head over to Future Dodgers on Twitter, he posted on Monday an entire list of the guys that were eligible for the Dodgers, either because of this 2024 or in previous years, and are still eligible for it. So you can check that out over on his Twitter page as well. Justin, we appreciate the time. Thanks for hopping on short notice. And we'll have you back on soon to talk prospects. All right.
Yeah, for sure.
All right.